What happened to your finger?
My finger? I bruised it very badly. I ate it. I bit it off. I was starving. I was starving. I bit my finger. I ate it. The tip of it. Just little.
What happened to my finger? Oh, haven't you heard? Didn't you heard? I guess after the trial, Amber Heard can finally say that Johnny beat her on the tune of $8 million for defamation damages. That's a big yikes. Of course, the media rushes onto the defense, explaining to you what you need to understand, that trial was actually an orgy of misogyny. If it was an orgy, I guess you can upload it on Twitch. They're a little bit more lax with the terms of service. I don't want to break this on YouTube because this platform is a lot more respectable, a lot more mature. It doesn't allow any indecency, so I'm not going to talk about the trial today. And welcome to this Wicked Stupid for the 6th of June, 2022. We shall begin with one of the most messed up news that I have ever covered on this Wicked Stupid. Tamagotchi kids. Could the future of parenthood be having virtual children in the metaverse? For those of you who are not old enough, Tamagotchis were these virtual pets which you could buy and you had to feed them and play with them at a regular level or they would die. But if you did feed them and play with them at regular levels, they would evolve. It was a fun trend which lasted for a little bit. And I guess now we have the ability to have babies in the metaverse. I'm really glad knowing that the metaverse will never catch on. Like, there's no way I will see my mother with a VR helmet. So, luckily, virtual children might not be a thing. But look at this. Holy shit. Tamagotchi kids yet to be born, though it won't be long, says Catriona Campbell. I don't know. That's not the point. That some people might decide to never be pregnant ever again. For loads of reasons, including concerns about the environment. Yes, because if we collectively choose not to fuck and instead opt in for the virtual children in the metaverse, it's going to really make a difference on the climate, especially when all those rich people are going to take their private jets to the next environmentalist meeting to lecture you about protecting the environment. Yeah, we are the problem. Right? Parents are the problem and not the actors, the environmentalist ambassadors on their yacht. Okay? You need to have sex less so they can pollute more. Makes perfect sense. So if you don't want to be pregnant for the environment, overpopulation, you hear that, Africa? India, China, yes, this is for you. Like, this product is from Mark Zuckerberg for you. Because here in Europe, we have declining birth rates. So I've been told we need more immigrants. Declining birth rates. So clearly, the baby Tamagotchi is not for Europe. Rising costs of bringing up a child, etc. I love the fact that out of all of this, it's only one reason that might make sense. Raising costs of bringing up a child. But hey, I'll tell you a secret. You know what our parents used to do? You can have like 9 or 10 kids and they can figure it out themselves. How do the Amish manage it, I wonder? Because the Amish aren't richer than the average bourgeois twat who buys coffee at Starbucks. How did they manage to have so many children? But okay, it's a mystery. It's mind-blowing. I hope that scientists one day figure it out. The Amish secret. One of the UK's leading authorities on artificial intelligence, so a person that glows in the dark once the light goes off, has a new book out called AI by Design, a plan for living with artificial intelligence. That within 50 years, technology will have advanced to such an extent that babies which exist in the metaverse will be indistinct from the real world. Really? Will they be able to take care of me when I'm old? Will they be able to join me at my Christmas family gathering? Will they be able to pay taxes for the government so that we can have the free healthcare, the free education, the free this and that? I mean, if there's no taxes to the government, how is the government going to give us free stuff? Do you know what happens when there's no taxes to the government? The government panics. Because the government realized, oh my God, like all these people throughout their lives, they paid into the free welfare system. And now we can't give it to them because there's no more taxes. What can we do? Let's lock them up in their houses. Let's track them. Let's put digital tracking devices so they can't hold us accountable for the fuck up that we have created. That's what happens. But it's okay. You know, you can have an online Tamagotchi in the metaverse instead. So our new kids be egg-shaped and have 3 buttons. I love the important questions that the Guardian is asking. Instead of asking like, okay, so wouldn't this like incentivize people not to have children? And if yes, how is the government going to have the taxes? I mean, look, you're a person working for the UK government on AI design. Who's going to pay you your pension if people don't have children? Where is the money going to come from? And of course, the answer is that it's going to come from racismus. Diane Abbott points it out. Government boasts it is opening up visas to the world's top graduates. But many originally come from third world countries. Why is Britain asset stripping poor countries like this? So in other words, Europe is supposed to care about the environment, have less children. Like this is what the media is constantly trying to say, right? Like you care about the environment, don't have that carbon footprint. Don't reproduce. Meanwhile, the question is what is the government going to get their taxes? Like, look at the people at the top of the government. Do you think they want less wages? Do you think they want less money and wealth? Of course not. So they need to take it from the taxpayer, which don't exist anymore because people are protecting the environment. So they're taking it from the third world nations. But that's racismus, according to Diane Abbott. And by the way, I find this absolutely hilarious because due to the European Union brain draining Eastern Europe, people from here have been complaining about this for the last decade. They were like, look, in Romania, it's difficult to find a doctor. It's difficult to find any sort of specialist because everyone is going to Germany. Because it's very easy, right? Like you can either get a job here in Romania as a doctor for $400 a month as a starter, or you can go to Germany and get 3,000 euros a month if you have the money to buy a plane ticket, because that's how the European Union works. So for some reason, it's not racismus, or either that or Diane Abbott just doesn't care about Eastern Europe when it's been happening for decades. But if it's being done to Africa, oh, all of a sudden she cares. I see. So the problem persists, and the question remains. If people don't want to have children, what will happen when the gravy train runs out? When there's more elderly that don't pay taxes but require the welfare system? How will the politicians get their pension? How will the bureaucrats get their paycheck? And the answer seems to be that they're still going to get theirs, but since the pie have shrunk and there's not enough pieces of the pie for everyone, well, the population will just have to be a little bit more controlled. Controlled so that they don't hold the people in power accountable. Controlled so that they cannot unionize, so that they can form groups and do activism. And how will that control take place? Well, the World Economic Forum tells us.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? Where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
Yes, so the consumers will be able to measure their own carbon footprint, which means that the people giving this ability to the consumers will be able to measure their carbon footprint as well. Whether it is the banks or the government, that knowledge will be available. In other words, everywhere you travel, everything you buy, everything you consume is going to be of their knowledge. And not only that, but this can also open the door for rationing. In other words, if you buy a lot of meat, at one point, if you keep wanting to buy some, either the price can go up because you're now paying for a carbon tax, or there can just be an error on the app that doesn't let you purchase more because you've already expended your carbon credit quota. This actually existed in my country for my parents in socialist Romania. I guess we were a lot more forward-thinking and ahead of the curve in order to protect the environment, but we call this rationing, and it existed everywhere in Eastern Europe. You had a ration card, and the moment that card expired, because you purchased your quota of oil, of gas, or of meat for that particular month, even if you had the money to buy more, you weren't allowed to. And this is pretty much the same system that we could benefit from in the future. Hey, you want to buy more gas? Well, your carbon credits quota has been expired for this month. You want to buy more meat? Well, I'm sorry, maybe you should start eating some of the bugs because your carbon credit quota has expired. And on top of that, oh, you don't like the new system? Oh, you want to protest? Oh, you're organizing people for a protest? Oh, well, we already seen in Canada what happens to protesters. Their bank accounts get frozen. And isn't it so wonderful that the customer can now see their carbon credits and they can see where they travel? In other words, the people giving you this ability can see as well. So you may have the money to purchase a train ticket, but the app can give you an error. You may have the money to purchase internet access, but the credit card can give you an error. In other words, you can be easily controlled and made sure that you are pacified from complaining. What a beautiful, progressive, forward-thinking utopia. So, as we can see, there may be a little bit of harm coming our way in the future, but, again, the World Economic Forum justifies it for us.
We need to accept that there will be some pain in the process. The pace that we need will open up for missteps. It will open up for shortages on energy. It will create inflationary pressures, and maybe we need to start talking about that pain is actually worth it.
Man, don't you love that? Don't you adore that? When a person that is not elected gets to speak on your behalf and uses words like we have decided, we must, we need to. And then they also say that the suffering that they have planned for you is fine. And we need to accept it. You know, that suffering that I'm pretty sure she's not going to be a part of because she looks to be well off. It doesn't look like she's part of the lower classes that are actually going to be hurt by things like inflation, which she is proposing. And I also like the fact that they also say, oh, we might make some mistakes. Might be a little bit oopsie doopsie, a hurdle here, a hurdle there. But at the end of the day, is justified. So let's talk about one of these hurdles that have been done in the United States. For example, Mrs. Yellen, who was on television on the authoritative sources, the ones that we need to trust, the ones that are dispelling misinformation, CNN, and she said that there's not going to be any inflation. Turns out that she was wrong. She did an oopsie.
But it wasn't just the president who got it wrong a year or so ago. I want to play for you what you said about inflation last year. Listen to this.
Is there a risk of inflation? I think there's a small risk, and I think it's manageable. I don't anticipate that inflation is going to be a problem, but it is something that we're watching very carefully.
Was it a mistake, Madam Secretary, to downplay this inflation risk? Did that contribute to the problems we're all seeing right now?
Well, look, I think I was wrong then about the path that inflation would take. As I mentioned, there have been unanticipated and large shocks to the economy that have boosted energy and food prices and supply bottlenecks that have affected our economy badly that I at the time didn't fully understand.
So let's just get one thing straight. If I, as a doctor, have a cancer patient coming up to me and I misdiagnose him and I tell him, you know what, you're fine. You can go home. Don't worry about that lump. There's nothing wrong with you. Just go home. And then after a couple of months, he finds out that he has cancer. I can lose my job for that. I can get fired if I do that mistake because I risk that person's life. Because if you treat the cancer early, if you take the measures early, you can save that person's life. Later, it's a lot more difficult. But that's just one life. If you're in a position where you influence over 300 million people and you tell them there's not going to be an inflation, even though it is painfully obvious for anyone with just 1 year of economic studies that if you print money, you cause inflation. I mean, this is not even rocket science. This is known Khaleesi. It is the most basic fundamental of economics. Inflation is only caused by the government by printing money. The producers do not cause inflation. The customers do not cause inflation. Foreign sheiks in the Middle East do not cause inflation. Foreign dictators waging wars with neighboring nations do not cause inflation. The only people that can cause inflation are the people that can print money. Period. How did she not know this? Well, she didn't, of course. And have people been affected by her lying to them, by CNN giving her a platform and allowing her to spread fake news and misinformation? And the fact checkers that failed to fact check her are going to be held accountable? Of course not. And I'm pretty sure many people will be affected by this. People who trusted her and made bad economic investments because, well, they thought that the economy is going to be fine because the television told them to. The authoritative sources told them to. And is she going to get fired? No. Is she going to get reprimanded? No. Again, a doctor that botches it up with one patient is going to have a world of hurt coming down his ass. But when someone at the top gets to do something like this, no repercussions. And you then wonder, why are the people at the top so incompetent? Because there's no filter. Absolutely none. I just want to remind you about how much they lie. Okay, so we got this chart here, which goes from December 2020 all the way to April 22. And it's just about inflation. And you can see when you put the news articles one next to another, just how bad it looks. And by the way, you can Google any of these titles. And you can see articles published, usually by the same publication. And the fact checkers were asleep. They're not going to be held accountable. The editorial guidelines were asleep. They're not going to be held accountable. No one lost their jobs over this. Okay? So we got the inflation is temporary and transitory. And then we have, it will pop back up and then go back down. Well, you know, fact checking, I'm going to do the American way of fact checking. It's on the screen. You can see how fact checkers operate in the US. Theoretically, he didn't give a time guide for this. So if it pops back down in 2050, this statement would be accurate. So this actually cannot be called false because maybe sometime in the future, the inflation will go down. Of course, you know, it's transitory. Long-term inflation, highly unlikely. It is accelerating. It's because of big meat. It's just a high-class problem. COVID is the root cause. Yes, when they say COVID, always think about the politicians' response to the pandemic, yes? So because they printed money during the pandemic while telling people to stay home, things weren't being produced. People had more money to buy stuff. And that's why you have shortages. That's how inflation works, by the way. The number of stuff being produced doesn't grow. People just buy more because now they have funny money to do so. They got the monopoly money. They can buy more. It's not sustainable. Stuff runs out. Inflation at peak. Supply chain's fault. And now it's Putin's fault. I'm really curious what other excuses are they going to come out. It's literally everything. But then printing money, all right? Like literally everything under the sun besides them printing money. Maybe the aliens will invade because I keep seeing Fox News pushing and the American government pushing the conspiracy theory because like 3 years ago talking about aliens was conspiracy theories. And conspiracy theory, by the way, is a code name for censor the shit out of that. Don't allow that conversation to take place. That is what conspiracy theory means. If you call something that, you don't have to debunk it. You just have to shut down the conversation because it's dangerous misinformation. And what used to be conspiracy theories 3 years ago, as in UFOs, is now on primetime news. I just want people to understand that. I just want it to sink in a little bit. before I play you another message from the administration which claimed they will never blame someone else for their own fuck-up.
So I guess the next question would be, does President Biden take any responsibility for his policies potentially contributing to inflation?
His policies has helped the economy get back on its feet. That's what his policies has done. When we talk about the gas prices right now, this is indeed Putin's gas hike. This is what we have seen in the most recent months of what we've seen at the gas pump. And so that is a fact. We have seen about 60% increase in the past several months, and because of the amassing and his invasion of Ukraine. And so the president, his goal right now, and what he is frustrated about, is what the American people have to go through, and what they are trying to deal with as they are around their kitchen table. So that is his focus right now.
Man, where are all the fact checkers? Are they asleep? I know that the Biden administration is incredibly boring, but please, fact checkers, try to stay awake. Fact check every now and then. I guess they're maybe too busy fact checking people on TikTok and YouTube for doing celebrity gossip and spreading dangerous misinformation about the debt trial, because that's the shit that matters, right? But I suppose that's fine. I guess the mantle of responsibility has been trusted upon me now, so I will fact check her because no one else wants to. Why is she talking about gas prices when she's asked about inflation? She was asked, it's like, hey, why is your administration printing money like crazy? So now she's talking about the gas price? Like, those are two separate issues. It's kind of like going home and my wife asking me, why do you have pictures of Pipkin Pippa on your phone, V? What's going on? And I would start talking, hey, do you know, like, the cat isn't feeling very well? Like, we should take her to the vet. My wife would be concerned. Like, V, you're changing the fucking subject. Why is there pictures of Pipkin Pippa? You know, like, that would be the normal, healthy response that I would expect a journalist to have in a similar situation, except when they're talking about inflation and gas prices. Secondly, how the fuck does America, from an energy-independent nation under the previous administration, ends up being dependent on what Russia does with neighboring countries? How did the gas prices change? Oh, maybe banning a pipeline from Canada might have to do with it. Maybe banning fracking. Maybe having environmental regulations coming up, which made America least dependent, which crippled America's energy independence, and they now have to buy gas from Russia, of all places? Do I even need to talk about the fun fact that while they're not buying gas from Russia and they're sanctioning that, India is buying gas from Russia and is selling it to America at a premium? I mean, are we allowed to even notice these economic decisions that only a savant can make? And of course, the same savant is going to fix the problem, because they're so smart. They're clearly the adults in the room, as the administration liked to call itself when it took office. So yeah, things aren't looking very bright, I gotta say. And as I mentioned before, people need to be controlled, as the World Economic Forum says. Like, everything a person does should be electronically verified. And on top of that, we got the inflation, which, you know, it's a good thing, because the transition is painful, but it needs to happen, like that lady mentioned. So what's next, I guess? You know, how do you control people a little bit better? Well, we saw in Canada, you know, banning guns, and in the United States, it's a lot more difficult to accomplish because they have a constitution. I would be really shocked to see how the United States would look like now if it didn't have that constitution. In fact, I would be really interested to see how the people in power would create a new nation now. Like, if you were to allow the people in charge of the United States right now to colonize the moon and create whatever nation they wanted, I bet it would be a fascist dystopia, wouldn't it? It would probably look really, really bad, wouldn't it? But anyway, right, they're still struggling. I mean, they're trying their best. For their own safety, of course, they want to ban the guns now. And regardless on which side of the debate you are, whether you're pro or anti-gun, you have to at least savor the hypocrisy. I mean, I decided to show you some arrows while the conversation is taking place, just so you can notice who are the people that are telling you you shouldn't have guns. I mean, if she was to have a gun in her hand while having this conversation, that would be problematic, right? But if she has people surrounding her while they are having guns, oh, that is very progressive, that is very civilized, that is the normal thing to do, isn't it? Why? Because we are desensitized from seeing it as a problem. If she was to have a holster right now, that would have been problematic, okay? Like, everyone would freak the fuck out. But when she has people surrounding her with weapons, that's fine. And then the question becomes, it's like, well, why do you need an assault rifle? And the World Economic Forum has police officers that look like this. Why do they need it? You know, the argument that, oh, the wall that Trump wants to build is racist because it assumes that the people who come illegally into the U.S. are going to commit a crime. Okay, that is the statement. That is the logic that we're going to be using. So when a politician walks around with armed individuals like this in an armored car, don't they assume, by the same logic, that these citizens are going to attack them? It's literally the same logic, right? I mean, if a wall is racist, surely a security detail is problematic as well for the same reason. Because they automatically assume that each person they encounter might be violent. So they might need a security that's armed to the teeth. And, of course, if you have a gun, you're a problem because you are a person that might snap, right? But you can have a gun if you become a member of the security detail. So all of a sudden, you're allowed to have whatever weapon you want if you become part of the government. How does that make any sense? Can anyone like that's pro-gun explain to me, right? Because you're taking the... And here's another thing. Stop and frisk is racist because you assume that the person may have committed the crime even though there's no evidence. But taking away the guns from citizens because you assume that they're going to use them to commit crimes, that's fine. And what guns are we even talking about? Well, apparently, according to the savants that are running the conversation, 9mm guns are considered high-caliber weapons. I mean, it makes sense because in La La Land, with a 9mm, you can probably take down a tank. You should send more Glocks to Ukraine in order to take down the Russian tanks. You know, if 9mm is a high-caliber weapon, like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? It's a super mega high-caliber weapon, isn't it? And then, of course, you have the misinformation coming from the U.S. president saying that the Second Amendment, aka the Constitution, is not absolute. Yeah, the amendment that says shall not be infringed, that one is not absolute. And it begs the question, it's like, okay, well, which other amendments aren't absolute then? What about women's right to vote? What about not owning slaves? Like, are those up for discussions as well? I mean, it's interesting, right? Because technically he's right, they're not absolute. But you need to have the numbers to change the Constitution. Isn't that how it works? Well, apparently not, because they said that if the Supreme Court goes against it, they will stack the Supreme Court. If the filibuster is against it, they will get rid of the filibuster. I hope they get rid of the filibuster. I mean, they were very upset when Mitch McConnell got Amy Coney Barrett in the last moment. They wish they had the filibuster then. Well, who got rid of it? Okay, keep getting rid of it. That's a good thing, right? Yeah, I'm sorry for getting a little bit upset, but I went to law school. I believed in the idea that equality under the law, and I'm getting upset to see people being treated differently. Like the ones in power, they get to do whatever they want. When they make a mistake, no one cares. There's no accountability. They use the word we, but they mean us. It's very upsetting. Let me put it like that. And it's so upsetting, I didn't even have time to talk about the LGBT stuff, because now is the Rainbow Month, and I should have talked about that, but I'll save this for the next week, you stupid. In the meantime, I'm going to have a conversation with the man who started this. I'm going to have a conversation with Carl. It's going to be on my live stream channel. You should be redirected to it, but if not, there's a link to the pinned comment. And I'm going to be live streaming with him because I haven't done so, I think, in years, actually. Like, it has been a year since I had the stream with Sargon. So, if you guys want to see that, like, allow YouTube to redirect you. If not, there's a link in the pinned comment. Hopefully, you enjoyed this segment. I hope that I made you laugh, because at the end of the day, this is for entertainment. And I'll see you on my live stream channel. Take care.